Okay, this is our next group of invertebrates, and these are called echinoderms. Echinoderms are animals, so they're in the animal kingdom, and they're invertebrates, so they do not have a backbone. Some examples of echinoderms. So write this down on your guided notes. Your examples: sand dollar. So sand dollars look like this. Sometimes they're also a greenish color instead of purple. You have sea urchins, which are very spiky. Sea star. The name that they used to be called was a starfish, but when scientists realized that that wasn't a really good name for them because they're not a fish at all, they changed the name to sea stars. So these are sea stars. Sea cucumbers. And brittle stars. Brittle stars look a lot like a sea star, except their arms are really skinny, whereas sea stars are a little bit wider. Echinoderm means spiny skin. And you can see sometimes they have a lot of pointy little spikes, or at the very least they have these little spikes on their skin. So all echinoderms are spiny. They have arms that extend out from the center of their body. So you'll see their arms coming out like this one, or like this is a sand dollar and this is underneath. The sand dollar animal is actually inside. This is kind of a softer shell, and they live inside there. Right, sea stars and brittle stars take in oxygen from the water through their arms. So underneath, this is what it looks like underneath, and they'll actually get oxygen straight out of the water, and they do it through their arms. So they breathe through their arms. Echinoderms have tube feet that are located on the bottom of their bodies. So here's an up-close picture of what tube feet look like. Tube feet, not 2 feet, tube feet, look like little suction cups. They use them to move, and they also use it to eat, because you can see right here it's eating a clam. That's starfish's favorite food to eat. And they use those tube feet to hold on to it and to open it up. So they use it to move, and they use it to get their food. So all echinoderms have those. Echinoderms can regenerate. That means to regrow body parts that are lost or damaged. So these starfish, these sea stars, you can see these 2 little bitty arms right here. Well, something broke those off. So it was probably a fish that tried to eat the sea star, but the sea star was able to get away. Well, it can regrow those arms. So it'll take it a few days, but it will be able to regrow the arms to the same size as the other ones. And this one you can also see that it is a little bit shorter on those 2 arms. Those are growing back. They've been bitten off, like I said, probably by a fish. An interesting story about these: if you cut them in half, both halves will regenerate. And like I said, one of their favorite foods are clams and mollusks. Well, there are people who go and get clams and mollusks and things out of the ocean to feed people. And those are farmers, but they farm the ocean. And there were some farmers that were upset that sea stars were eating all of their clams and mussels and scallops. So they thought that they would kill them, and they took them and they cut them in half and threw them back in the water. Well, unfortunately, what happened for them, both sides of the sea stars that they had cut in half grew into more, so they had twice as many sea stars as what they started with. So sea stars can, and other echinoderms, can regenerate or regrow their body parts. All right, this is some cool pictures of them eating. And this is a closer up picture of from another slide. These tube feet hang on to the clam, and they pull it apart, and it's really, really hard to open those up. So they have a whole lot of strength in these little bitty suction cup called tube feet, and they open it up, and then they stick their stomach into the shell. They digest the clam, and then they pull their stomach back into their body. And here you can actually see it. They also love to eat crab. Crab is another favorite food of sea stars. this is a crab, and these 3 little white dots right here, this is the bottom of the crab shell. So this sea star has ripped off the bottom of the shell, and this stuff that looks stringy, that's actually the sea star's stomach. So it sticks this stomach into the shell of the crab. It's going to digest all that yummy crab meat, and then it's going to pull its stomach back into its body. So it's kind of gross, but kind of cool too. An adaptation, this is a vocabulary word we're going to be using for the rest of the school year. An adaptation is something that allows an animal or other organism to survive in its environment. So it could be a physical change, or it could be a behavior, but an adaptation helps living things survive in their environment. So we're going to talk about some of the adaptations for defense. Defense is a word that means protection. So how do these echinoderms protect themselves? Well, they all have spiny skin. And these are pointing to some of the little spikes that are on the up-close version. You can see the up-close picture of the sea star. It's got these little spikes. And then spikes on like the sea urchin. This sea urchin actually has poison in its spikes. So if something were to get poked with those, it would inject poison too. The sea stars can also break off their arm for escape. So if a fish were to bite one of its arms, it could actually pull away and it would rip its arm off, and it would get away while the fish was eating its arm. And the sea star doesn't mind losing its arm because remember, they can regenerate. So it's going to be able to regrow that arm. Sea cucumbers actually spit out their guts to escape a predator. And I'm going to show you a video in just a few minutes that shows you what that looks like. It sounds really gross, but they actually can regrow their guts too. Sea urchins have sharp spines, and like I said, some of them even have poisons in their spines. So these are ways that they have adapted to living in their environment, and these are things that help them defend themselves against things that are trying to eat them. All right, so let's look at the sea star, and let's see it eating. This is a cool picture. He's putting some food down, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit so we can get to what the sea star is actually doing. All right, it uses those little tube feet. That's its tube feet. And it uses those to push the food towards its mouth. And since it's just a little piece of food, it's actually going to shove that food into its mouth. I'll show you another video where it's sticking its stomach out. Okay. Let's see. Sea star. Oh, my video's not there anymore. I'm going to see if I can find you another video of the sea star sticking its stomach out. Alright, and this is a picture, or not a picture, but a video of the sea cucumber. And this diver has bothered this sea cucumber, and these white stringy things coming out, that's its intestines. So that's part of its guts. So if that were a fish that were coming up trying to eat it, what it would do is stick these out, and while the fish was eating those stringy things, it would make its escape and it would get away. So this is a defense. This is an adaptation for defense. That's its guts. And it spits those out to defend itself. And it doesn't mind if those get eaten because it can always just regrow some more. It can regenerate. Okay, one of these other videos I'm going to show you at one of your stations that you're going to have later this week. So that's all we have for echinoderms. So you need to mark your text. So you need to either circle or highlight in yellow all of your vocabulary words. So your vocabulary words would be things like adaptation. That's a definite vocabulary word. Defense. Regeneration. Put a star beside your examples. anything that looks like a vocabulary word, like tube feet, those kind of things you need to either highlight in yellow or you need to circle them. You also need to write at least 3 questions on the side. You do not have to write a summary. Notice that it says glue illustrations here at the bottom. You're going to have a station later on this week, and you are going to glue in pictures of echinoderms there. So don't write a summary there. You're going to glue in pictures later this week.